Hi, everybody. My name is Danielle Ankowitz, and I am choosing option one for our research paper, and that has to do with political ambition. This is for women in politics. And I did this project all by myself. I just wanted to point that out in the beginning so there's no confusion. But so let's just hop right into it. I learned a lot from the Lawless and Fox It Still Takes a Candidate, the 2010 version that we got. And so this is kind of what this first slide is about. And, when it comes to political ambition, women are not less ambitious than men. In fact, women start their careers just as ambitious, if not, you know, they're just as driven as men are. Women's ambition levels do vary though. And the research that I found is that they most of the time they vary by job and company, and their happiness is that goes into a lot of what they choose as a career path. And so like I said, it varies by job and company, and it's just not primarily by family status, relationships, whether or not you're a mom and have a family. So when places of work enforce a positive environment, regarding gender diversity, all women, including mothers, are eager to advance in their career. They're going to want to work for someone who sees their value in them. Having children does not make women less ambitious in the workforce, especially high powered jobs like politics. So moving on to the next slide that goes along with my paper is, women have and are breaking down the barriers. Ambition is stemmed from company culture or how the job appeals to that person. Men typically want to be seen as powerful, resourceful, and bring in that they want to bring in a good income. So men and women kind of have those different viewpoints of picking a career, picking going into politics. Women, want to be treated with respect, and they also want to love what they do. And in politics, women most likely are going to advocate for change in the system. Um, a good example that I got from, wanting to advocate for change is that in the documentary Knock Down the House, women wanted to see real change in their communities. These four women that they followed throughout the entire documentary, they kept bringing up the term non-career politicians, you know, and I think that's so important to emphasize to women now, because you don't have to be this high-powered attorney, that having that generational wealth of coming from a family who's been in politics for years and years. These women all went up against men who've been in power for a long time. And, what was kind of shown in the documentary is that they had to constantly prove themselves to not only themselves, but to the public, to the media, of why they deserve to not only campaign for a spot on Congress, but to essentially prove that they can do it. You don't have to be this big time lawyer, like I said, non-career politicians. And moving on to the next slide, um, we asked, like, why do women and men have different ambition levels? I believe men and women both have ambitious attitudes when it comes to their careers, but have different views in politics, and policies that they advocate for in politics. Women are more likely to advocate for human and equal rights, while men promote economic interests, foreign policy, uh, military decision making. That's kind of how it kind of stems off in different branches of how we view, how different genders view politics, and how there is a large gap in gender bias. And I'm not going to go into that fully, but in the Fridkin and Kinney, The Changing Face of Representation, the book, individuals rely on political institutions to help them kind of start up their campaign process. And they need that extra support to pretty much fund what they're doing, and a lot of women don't have that support behind them because a lot of these institutions are dominated by men. And like it was mentioned in the Fridkin and Kenny book, we have that ingrained ethos of masculinity. So we see that gender bias. We see um, it's kind of just more difficult for women to get integrated into the political arena from that standpoint. And yeah, so sorry, moving on to the next slide. Um, you know, I tried to like break this down as easy as I could for myself. And it's just to put it simply is women have different ideas than men. They just do. And men have different ideas than women do. You know, women can implement, different conversation and have different ideas that can be brought up in a professional standpoint in politics. Constituents normally already have their mind made up before a candidate even hits the campaign trail, which is unfortunate. So, how that ties into again, tear down the house, because these women start out with a lower chance of winning. They're already taking a big risk on spending money, taking time away from their families, taking time away from their professional jobs that, on top of, going through a grueling campaign process. You kind of have to think of politics as a ladder. You start at the local level, then you move on to state, and then you eventually make it up to the national level. And, that's just another reason kind of why women are not very prone to getting involved in politics is kind of the gender disparity in politics that lead women astray. So that's just another reason. And then my final closing thoughts of the paper, the research, that final question to ask us is how we can mitigate that gap when it comes to pretty much integrating more women into politics, kind of breaking down that barrier of the gender gap. And simply, I came up with two solutions that maybe a lot of you can agree on or might have had. But so I typically said we need to recruit more women. Typically, women are more likely to run if they are encouraged to do so. So I think that could be a huge help of, getting out there and encouraging women that they are completely capable and of doing this job. Like they can do it. We just need more people who are willing to, if that makes sense. And then another solution that I um, added to my research paper is that we need to implement more organizations that help women run. So kind of in that documentary there, a lot of women didn't have the resources, the funding, like I said earlier, to even start their campaign process. So we need to kind of implement those organizations and helping women, help them through the election process, help them get noticed. And I think that could really help with that gender disparity and how women, look at the political arena, because it would just be awesome to see more women collectively in Congress, in the White House, in politics. And I really just enjoyed this researching this paper. I hope you guys kind of got a little taste of what I thought. And thank you for coming out. Sorry.